Yay, another review from me to you guys, and today I'm finally doing a review of a Marvel comic book. Now, I struggled with this one as to decide which one should I read and review for you guys, and then I decided to read one that really changed my opinion on a character of the Marvel Universe. This is a review of the JMS run on Thor. In short, go fucking buy it now. It's one of the best comic books I've ever read in my life. If you don't like it, you should kill yourself right now. But the long version is that JMS basically made Thor accessible to regular people. Thor used to be a pretty hard character to get into. I wouldn't know because I've only been a comic book reader for a year, so the only thing I have to my name is the JMS stuff and the current journey into mystery stuff that's going on with Kid Loki. But this run explains everything that you need to know about Thor. It explains his cast while delivering one of the best villain plots I've ever seen. Now, a negative of this, well, not really a negative of the comic book. This is more of a negative of the Avengers. Loki is so devious here. He's such a goddamn mastermind in this story that he pretty much destroys the Avengers Loki, because this is how Loki should do stuff. He should act like a good guy after his rebirth, because all the Asgardians were destroyed during something called Ragnarok, and now Thor is bringing them back using Mjolnir. Um, Loki is a real evil genius here. His venomous tongue, as they call him, he's basically a snake. He poisons everyone with his tongue. He is dangerous. He manipulates people, and this makes the Avengers Loki seem kind of a bad interpretation of the character. But besides that, that's not really a negative of the book. That's kind of more of a negative of the movie now. But Thor had a dynamic which I didn't like in the animated series, because in the Hulk animated series there was an episode where Hulk and Thor fought, and Thor had this kind of split personality thing. It's here, however, it's made out of necessity, because Thor has to use his Blake identity, his human doctor identity, to mingle in with normal people, because all the Asgardians have been reincarnated as simple humans. So that means he has to travel the world, find his old friends, use Mjolnir to awaken their Asgardian forms, and bring them back to Asgard. Um, Thor has to deal with a lot of stuff here. First of all, he has to deal with being completely alone. Then he has to deal with the political implications of bringing Asgard to Earth. Then there's the stuff after Civil War, because Thor was dead after that, and Iron Man used Thor's DNA to create basically an evil clone that murdered a bunch of superheroes during Civil War. There's a great issue where Thor just listens to Tony Stark talk about, you need to work with the government, or I'm gonna kick your ass. You have to do this, this, and that. And then just Thor says, um, okay, you lead to the destruction of my race. You take my DNA without my permission. Then you create an abomination that butchered my friends and stained my name. And now you want me to play by your rules. You think you can command a god? And then he just goes ape shit, and he levels Tony. I mean, he destroys him completely. He beats the shit out of him so badly that Tony's like, okay, we can make a compromise. If you buy the land beneath Asgard, then that's your land, and we can treat it as a separate embassy to another country. Is that okay? Thor just drops him on the floor and tells him to walk back home, because he destroyed Tony's armor like completely, like so much he can't even fly back home. And I thought that was a pretty awesome issue. There is something weird about Loki that you might notice right off the bat, because Loki is a woman here, and he kind of uses this to say, well, I'm a new person now. I remember what I did, but I'm a new person now. I'm a better person. But later on, it is not true, because he stole the body from Sith, the goddess of war. He's using her body to manipulate people, to thinking he's not the original Loki when in reality he is. So then he uses his connections with Hela, the queen of the underworld. He uses his connections with Victor Von Doom and even Osborn's Dark Avengers, because this was going on during Dark Reign. And there's this whole big plot that's happening. Loki really doesn't have a scheme at first, but then as it goes on, you realize, holy shit, he did this. He's been setting this up for years and years. Like, Thor doesn't stand a chance if he doesn't stop this guy. And Loki is just a badass villain here. Thor is kind of like in the movies. It's the perfect mix between that Shakespearean art thou bullcrap that I don't read. And that sounds pretty fancy, but it's not used too much. It's used sparingly, and it works when it is used and utilized very well. Despite how great this story is, there are some things that are not very reader-friendly. This does explain Thor completely. Like, you don't have to know any of the past Thor comics. However, if you don't know Civil War, like what happened during Civil War, then you're going to be confused as to, wait, Tony made a clone out of you and then he killed superheroes? When did this happen? Or, I don't know what Ragnarok is. That isn't a comic book thing, that's a Norse thing. I don't know what Ragnarok is. Ragnarok is the name of the Thor clone, but I doubt a clone would have killed all the Asgardians, because all the Asgardians were dead at this point. I think they all died during the Avengers Disassembled storyline by Bendis. So Ragnarok came after Thor. I don't really know. There is some of that small stuff that doesn't make sense. Also, if you just watched the movie like me and you jumped onto this book, you might be surprised that Thor does have this dual personality thing going on. But this isn't, in his human form, he's not like Thor just in human form. I mean, he's a completely different person. And Jane Foster is not his romance. Jane Foster is his romance in the movies. Here, Sif is Thor's romance, while his Blake personality's ex-wife is Jane Foster, I think. And she's not a scientist like in the movie. She's a doctor. Yeah, that's what she is. She's a doctor, and so is Blake. So there are these differences that did seem kind of weird to me, but then I realized this happened way before the movie, and the movie pretty much used a lot of this stuff as the foundation for its story, for its own interpretation of Thor, so I can understand that. The other bad thing is that this thing ended badly, and you know why? Because Marvel did this stupid event thing. They basically told JMS, you've got a year of uninterrupted storytelling. When that year went up, and they decided, hey, we got this Siege storyline going on, so stop whatever you're doing just so you can tie into our event. And JMS was like, no. Like, either let me finish my story, or I'm leaving. And then he left right when the story was good, because at the end of this, nothing really gets resolved that much. And it's kind of a sad ending to a great run. Nothing gets resolved, and then I have to go read what another writer does with JMS's story. But yeah, this isn't really the comic book's fault. This is more of Marvel's fault for forcing JMS, and this pretty much led to JMS leaving Marvel altogether and going to DC. And I can understand him. That really was a horrible thing that they did. I mean, it's such a shame that this couldn't be completed the way JMS wanted it to be. I mean, they couldn't even give the guy a few more months just so he can finish all his entire story and then just leave satisfied. This whole thing feels unfinished at the end, and just when it gets really good, it falls apart because there really is no ending when JMS is writing it. I don't know what the other writer did, but that's how it ended. But anyway, JMS's Thor is one of the best comic book runs I have read yet. It is just as good as anything Grant Morrison or Scott Snyder have done, and this is the definitive Thor run. If you don't know anything about Thor except maybe watch the Avengers and or Thor the movie, then you should check this out. This is a fantastic comic book run. but be prepared for a disappointing ending because a lot of stuff gets left unresolved, and you might need to check up some events like Ragnarok, Avengers Disassembled, and Civil War before you can completely appreciate this. But once you do all this stuff, I think you'll be in store for a fantastic comic book. So yeah, I cannot recommend JMS's Thor any much. Just buy it now, and if you haven't bought it already, then what the hell is wrong with you, son?